This is Alicia Kelso, executive editor at Nation's Restaurant News. I am at the Create event in Nashville. I've got Gabe Alonso here. He is the vice president of integrated marketing at El Pollo Loco. Came all the way from California.
Yep.
We're so appreciative of that.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And thank you for making the trek. You were just on a panel. Tell me what you were talking about.
So effectively, we're talking about the importance of influencer marketing,
Very
right?
good.
And it was super interesting because, especially in the restaurant industry, you have companies that are of varying sizes, from 7 stores or 20 stores, hyper local, to stores that obviously are thousands and thousands, or a store like ours, which is just under 500 locations in the Southwest, so a very regional brand. And how you can use influencers, both from a call it macro, higher level perspective, and also micro nano, to be able to drive your business and brand priorities. And so, yeah, it was a pretty far-reaching conversation, but it was nice to kind of get the context of all the varied restaurant operators and how influencers might play a part in their strategies.
You're using terms like micro and macro, and honestly, the influencer conversation is relatively new in the grand scheme of marketing.
Yep.
Obviously, this event is geared toward emergings, folks without huge marketing budgets. So what did you find that they're most curious about? Because we've covered influencer marketing with NRN.
Yeah.
From our high-level perspective, it does seem to have a sort of a leveling playing field when it comes to marketing.
Yeah.
What are they looking for?
So I'd say there was maybe 2 key things. The first is sort of strategically, like, how do you even start? And asking questions like, can a brand of my size even, like, does it make sense financially or otherwise, right? And sort of answering that question. The second piece is, okay, I know this is important, but like, how can I start to measure and start to show that this is a worthwhile investment, and actually keep the funds for it, right? And so we talked a lot about how, starting is actually pretty simple, but you have to understand a few key elements, right? The first is, who is your consumer? What are your business priorities? And then also, what is your product priorities? Because a lot of times, I think people think of influencer marketing as like, I'm gonna bring a celebrity and we're gonna pay them $1 million and they're gonna talk about our product. That's not the case. A lot of times, especially when you're starting out as a brand, your creators and influencers could be consumers themselves. So you're activating people that already have an affinity, a loyalty to the brand,
Sure.
and now you can surgically deploy them to support your specific brand messages.
Okay. Obviously, the marketing budget for El Pollo Loco is going to be wildly different for 3-unit Kelso grill.
Heard great things about the Kelso grill.
You know what is your advice to get past that daunting conversation, that daunting idea of this guy from El Pollo Loco is talking to us? Of course, he's got these ideas, but there's no way we can execute. How do you get started?
So again, I think it's actually pretty simple. Depending on that small of a brand, the biggest thing is to understand who's talking about you, right? More often than not, there's already going to be people online that are like, I ate at the Kelso Grill last night. It was delicious.
It was good.
It was really good, right? I got this combo, I got that combo. So it starts with a little bit of social listening, in my opinion, seeing who's already talking about you. And then maybe you just start sending them a gift card and say, hey, I'd love for you to come in on us, try this thing. And you can really build it from the ground up. And then once you start to have a larger either following, or you start to expand a little bit more, Kelso Grill grows from 3 to 300 or something like that, right? Then you can start talking about, okay, media budget, right? Generally, media budgets are split into awareness and transaction driving. I look at my awareness tactics. How can I carve out a piece of that to ensure that I'm supporting my influencers, because they are just as important to bring awareness to our brand as a paid asset on Facebook.
Sure. Okay. So don't be intimidated.
Don't be intimidated.
Don't be intimidated. Tell me then, how do you allocate? Because another issue that especially these emerging operators have is the time resource, not just the money resource. So how do you allocate not just your budget, but your time? Because this seems to be becoming table stakes. Correct me if you disagree.
No, I agree. I 100% agree.
Okay.
I think influencer marketing is not something that is nice to have. It's something that's must have as a tactical component of any strong marketing campaign, product campaign. look, we're lucky enough where we have an agency that helps manage a lot of these relationships for us. I think at some point I've been in brands where we handled it all in-house, and at some point your legal team goes, no, thank you. Like, we can't handle these contracts anymore, right? Because there's so many coming in.
Right.
So I think it is important, if you can afford it, to have an agency or some dedicated body to help manage the relationships, because at some point it'll just become untenable if you're really building out the program accordingly.
Give me an idea now. We're talking about influencer marketing. One or two more questions about that, because it does feel very new. I know that it's been around for a while, but very organically now it's table stakes, like you said. Give me an idea of how you at El Pollo Loco have reallocated, shifted to make this a bigger piece of your marketing puzzle to sort of keep pace with the growth of this.
So we've shifted our strategy entirely to, well, not entirely, but we've shifted our strategy considerably in order to actually put influencers more at the center of how I would say, talk about the brand and the business on a more consistent level. So, one of the things we talked about was, if in the past from our product campaigns, we would deploy what I would call mid-tier or macro influencers. So think of them a couple 100,000 followers and above, like bigger folks. We'd hire about a dozen of them. You deploy them in the beginning of product campaigns. You have this 2-week incredible, like, oh, the impressions are amazing, and then it just kind of fizzles out. I call it firework marketing. Like, it burns brightly and then it fizzles out, right? I was like, okay, we are not in feeds nearly often enough, and so we need more content. So we're gonna switch that, and we're gonna go from just hiring mid-tier macros to now actually creating an ambassador program that is micro nano that we can deploy on a more consistent basis, not just to talk about product content, but actually talk about new brand messages. We're in a very value heavy time right now in the industry, right? That just kind of, yes, right? We've all heard. So that means we have more messages we got to talk about now, and how I can now deploy these people because I have like an army of advocates that are at the ready for me to talk about anything that I need them to talk about. And so that's sort of how we've shifted our approach a little bit to better insert them into more than just like awareness driving tactics, but really expand them as a brand tool, not just a product tool.
Very good. Okay. Piggybacking off the influencer conversation, we did our Power List this year focused on marketers, and one thing that we have all realized, and I'm sure I'm preaching to a choir here, is just how dynamic this has become. 20 years ago, you had print to worry about, maybe some billboards and some mailers and all that. What are your parting words of wisdom, again, for some of these emergings, to have the mental capacity to understand, learn, and prioritize when this marketing landscape is so it's dizzying dynamic?
It is.
You said the influencer piece is table stakes. So what else would be?
I think I would take a step back and say, like, who is your consumer and where are they? That would be first and foremost, right? Once you understand that, then you can start to understand what channels within your marketing mix you need to really lean into in order to engage them properly. So as an example, TV might not make sense for some smaller folks, because if you're going after a younger consumer, they're in streaming, they're in social. So maybe like TV doesn't make as much sense. You can start to lean more digital, and then now the dollars that might have gone to linear might now be able to be available for influencers where they weren't before. Ultimately, I think it goes down to what consumers are you trying to hit, where do they play, and then how do you invest accordingly. Now, I think influencers, no matter what, will have to be a part of that, because we've gotten to the point to, what you were saying before, it's a heavily saturated sort of area now, and there are influencers, whether you're 20 or 80. I mean, some of the biggest influencers right now is a middle-aged or elder Asian couple who do like "Get Ready with Me," videos.
Oh, their retirement home.
Exactly, right.
I think Taco Bell leveraged that.
They did.
Sorry to bring the competitor.
It's okay. But I mean, so you take a little bit of what's happening culturally, what consumer is that, where your consumer is, and then deploy your funds accordingly. Because yes, while it is table stakes, I don't want somebody to invest in something that ultimately they feel is not going to drive their business, and that might change over time, but it's really about starting with the consumer first.
2 years you've been with this brand.
Correct.
A lot has happened in this industry in 2 years. To your point, we have barreled into a value environment. that I think has gone beyond any of our wildest imaginations. I don't think any of us came into 2024 saying, you know what, let's discount. Tell me then, amid all of this this pace, this change, has there been a campaign that has been particularly successful for you guys? Because we talked about this before we jumped on.
Yeah.
There were very, very few positive sales brands in the industry, like almost 50 brands on the public market. Yours was one of them. So give me a sense of what has been working for you to cut through not only all the marketing noise, but also the value noise, and to get the consumer to pay attention where they're not doing that anymore in a lot of instances, at least not right now. I think they'll come back.
Yeah,
but,
that's the hope.
What has been, some of the successful case studies for you to break through that?
Yeah, so I mean, not necessarily one from this year, but one from a few years ago, where when we launched Birria for the first time, it did exceptionally well for us. I think that was a phenomenal moment for us, where we were at like sort of the cutting edge of the zeitgeist, right? So Birria as a food trend was about to pop off, and our culinary team was able to capture that lightning in a bottle. That plus, to bring it back a little bit, our use of influencers before any traditional marketing, took our mix from, I think it was something like 1% to 8% in the week before we had traditional media turned on. So we created our own viral moment, and candidly, that is sort of our North Star. Like, how can we continue to recreate that, both from newness of innovation, incorporation of cultural tastemakers and voices, and then obviously something that is also of note for our consumers, where they feel it's something they want to invest in and put in their stomachs, as it were. This year, though, in particular, and I think something that we've been continuing sort of rallying around is this idea of our loyalty program in particular, and really trying to invest in getting messaging out there that is the best deals are in the app. I think we really want to showcase that our program for our members and for future consumers, if you really want to get the best value from us, it's in the app, it's in our program. This is really where we're taking care of most of our consumers, and it's also where we can continue to serve folks, right? The more you do with us, we use a number of propensity models when it comes to our CRM program, so we're able to be really targeted around offers, like emails, topics, all that good stuff based off of how much you buy with us, your LTV, et cetera. So for us, loyalty has become one of the single largest unlocks, not only for our brand and building community, but also for our business and driving transactions in the brand.
It's interesting. We've been talking a lot about loyalty, almost as much as value. Lots of brands are launching for the first time or refreshing, which is what you guys did.
Yep.
Can you give me any sort of metrics on what you're seeing? It seems like it's kind of exceeding expectations here.
I would temper expectations. I'd say it's doing well for us. So we launched about a year and a half ago. I think the experience has been great. We've gotten positive feedback, certainly from our younger consumers, on how we've evolved the program from where we were to where we are now. If I'm going to be my own harshest critic, I would still love to see certain updates on some UX, some actual experience within the app to make it even easier for our consumers to check out, get their offers and rewards, and continue to have a great experience with us. But we're incredibly happy with where it is right now, and to me, I think the sky's the limit for the experience.
I was gonna ask you what's next, and it sounds like you already answered that question.
A little bit.
But how do you keep this momentum going? Loyalty program and beyond.
Yes.
Especially in such a tough environment, where consumers just want something that stands out. What's next?
I mean, again, I think it's important that it's not just any one thing. It's a combination of all of those things, right? So for us, we're in the midst of developing roadmap plans for next year for our loyalty experience, and that is both inclusive of UX as well as the actual program experience as well, to be able to drive more frequency and repeat visits, give more value back to the consumer, more agency in the experience, which I'm particularly excited for. And then continuing to invest in key moments in our brand calendar where we feel we can create the the conversation and really be at the forefront of culture.
Sure.
And so that is looking at the product calendar, understanding where there's gaps, inserting ourselves, and continuing momentum when when maybe some of that newness has died down from the product calendar itself.
Outstanding.
But I'm excited for 2025.
I'm excited to follow along. And again, I appreciate your time. I've got a conversation with your CEO, Liz, tomorrow.
I'm excited for that one.
So we'll keep getting more news out of El Pollo Loco, and I trust you'll keep me posted on all the changes.
Of course, you'll be the first to know.
I
Alicia.
hope so. You heard it. All right, thanks so much, Gabe.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Of course.